Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. You know how much we love digging into the nitty-gritty of power and influence. Today, we're going back in time, but with a very modern twist. We're going to try to crack the code of courtly life.
I love that cracking the code.
Yeah. Think how to win friends and influence people, but way more strategic.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
We'll be using The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene as our main guide.
A classic. And I'll be chiming in with some historical anecdotes to bring those laws to life.
Okay, so we've got this book, The 48 Laws of Power, plus some seriously fascinating stories from history. And they're all about how people navigated power, influence, all that good stuff. And our mission today is to see if these old school strategies still work in today's world.
You know, it's amazing how relevant this stuff actually is, whether you're, dealing with a tough boss or trying to get your point across in a meeting, or even just figuring out family dynamics. Understanding those power dynamics can be a huge help.
Right. It's like a secret weapon for just navigating life in general.
I like to think of it as a toolbox.
Okay. Love it. So before we get to all those juicy laws, let's set the stage a little bit. What exactly are we talking about when we say court society?
Okay. Imagine a world where everything revolves around one powerful figure, right?
Yeah.
Could be a king, a queen, maybe even a CEO today.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Everyone else is basically trying to win this person over, climb that ladder of influence. It's a high-stakes game, always on, always playing.
It's giving very much office politics, but on a much grander scale.
Exactly. Green actually uses the analogy of a dog in the book to kind of illustrate this dynamic.
A dog. I gotta hear this.
So think about it, right? A dog, it relies on its master for everything. The food, the shelter, the love, the walks, you name it. It's always looking for approval, right? Trying to please.
Okay.
A courtier, back in the day, is in that same position, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their status, their whole security, even their survival, it hinges on the ruler's, mood, their favor.
Wow. That's a pretty powerful image. I can't lie.
It's a good one.
Okay, so in this whole game of courtly influence, what's the big rule? The thing we absolutely need to master?
Well, Robert Greene lays it out pretty clearly. It's Law 24, play the perfect courtier.
Okay, play the perfect courtier. Sounds intriguing, but how do you actually do that? What are the moves?
Well, think strategy, think subtle.
Okay.
You want something. You can't just, march in and demand it.
Right.
You got to know how to influence, but without, directly challenging the person in charge.
So it's more like using your smarts, using your dumb ag to kind of get what you want without making enemies.
Mingo.
Okay.
You got to read the room, know the unspoken rules, maybe use a little chamaki here and there.
I'm getting it. It's like, even if you've got this killer idea, if you present it the wrong way, if you step on some toes, nobody's going to listen.
Truth. And there's this great story in the book that shows exactly what I mean. It's about a Chinese emperor and his advisors.
Ooh, a story. I'm all ears.
All right, picture this. The emperor is making some seriously bad calls, like decisions that are going to wreck the whole empire.
Oh, no.
But his advisors, they know they can't just be like, yo, emperor, you're messing up. That's a one-way ticket to, well, not a good place.
Yeah, high stakes for sure. What did they do?
Okay, they got creative. They start making these weird things happen all over the empire, like geese flying backward.
Wait, what? Geese flying backwards?
Yeah, like the wrong way. And the moon showing up during the day.
That is wild.
Right.
Okay, but why?
It worked. The emperor sees all this crazy stuff, and he's freaking out. He thinks the whole universe is messed up because of him.
So they used these, symbols instead of confronting him directly.
Pretty smart.
Genius, right? The emperor goes to his advisors for help, and they kind of gently steer him back on track.
That's a great story. So what you're saying is, even when you're dealing with, the top dog, sometimes that Tata approach, that indirect approach, is the way to go.
100%. It can be way more powerful than just arguing head on. Okay, I'm taking notes.
That's it.
So we know playing the perfect courtier is all about being strategic, being subtle. But what else? What other moves do we need in our arsenal?
Another key principle is fitting in. You got to adapt.
Adapt.
Your style, the way you talk, even your behavior, it all has to match the person you're dealing with.
So it's kind of like knowing your audience and speaking their language.
Exactly. You want the ruler, the boss, whoever it is, to feel comfortable, understood. Like you get them.
But doesn't that seem kind of, I don't know, fake? Like you're just buttering them up?
There's a balance for sure. It's more like finding common ground, showing that you get their perspective even if you disagree.
Ah, okay, so it's more about building that rapport, that connection.
Yes. And then you can subtly guide the conversation where you want it to go.
Okay, so it's kind of like Hanji, Abgiba, Bilkus Ahihai, but then, gently steering things your way.
You got it. You're being agreeable, but you're not, compromising yourself.
Okay, so this whole courtier thing is a bit of a minefield. Got to be careful where you step.
It is. It is.
Speaking of minefields, let's talk about a classic mistake. What about being a sycophant? Like, is there a danger of taking this whole courtier thing too far?
Oh, yeah. Big time. Being a good courtier is not the same as being a spineless chumcha.
Right. You got to have some self-respect.
Exactly. Nobody likes a chumcha. You got to find that sweet spot between, strategic charm and genuine respect.
So you can appreciate their good qualities, their accomplishments, without going overboard.
Yeah. Like no showering them with fake compliments.
Right.
People can always tell when you're not being real.
All right, so we talked about not grabbing attention, fitting in, not being a chomcha. What else? What other gems of wisdom do you have about this perfect courtier thing?
Always, and I mean, always bring good news.
Okay.
You want to be the person who's associated with good vibes, with solutions, not the one who's always bringing problems.
So, like, spread the coochie, basically.
Yeah, you could say that. It's about being the problem solver, not the problem bringer.
Okay, so it's not about ignoring the tough stuff, but about bringing it up in a way that's like, hey, here's the problem, and here's how we could maybe fix it.
Bingo. And there's this awesome example from history. A French architect, Jules Hardouin-Mansart, he designed the Palace of Versailles.
No way. That's incredible. The Palace of Versailles.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me more.
This guy, he was a master at this. Whenever the king had an issue with some building project, he wouldn't focus on the bad stuff. He'd just come in with these amazing solutions.
So he was like the original Jugadu architect,
Yeah.
always finding a way to make things work.
Right. And by doing that, by always being the solution guy, he got a great reputation. He earned the king's trust, got a powerful position.
It's making me think about the energy we bring to any situation,
Yeah.
especially when you're dealing with people who have more power than you.
It's a big deal. People gravitate towards those who bring good energy, those who solve problems, not create them.
All right, so we've got avoiding attention, fitting in, bringing good news, not being a chamcha. What else is crucial in this perfect courtier playbook?
Master your emotions.
Hmm.
You can't let your feelings run wild in a court setting, or really anywhere where power is involved.
So no losing your cool, even if things are getting a little crazy.
Exactly. You got to stay composed.
Even when someone's being a total pagal.
Especially then.
Yeah.
Think of it as a performance, right? Every interaction is a performance. You want to come across as someone who's got it together, someone reliable.
It's like emotional chess. One wrong move and it's game over.
It's a delicate dance,
Yeah.
right? You got to be charming, you got to be agreeable, but not too buddy-buddy. Strategic, yes, but not sneaky or deceitful. It's all about finding that balance.
Speaking of walking that fine line, are there like examples of people who didn't quite master this?
Oh, yeah. History is full of them. One that comes to mind is Beau Brummel. He was a big deal in English society back in the late 1700s, early 1800s.
Okay, spill the kabar. Who's this guy and what happened?
He was famous for his style, super witty, and best buds with the Prince of Wales, who later became King George IV. This guy, he was the influencer of his time, set all the fashion trends.
So the original style guru?
Exactly. But his downfall, he got a little too chummy with the prince, started treating him like, just another guy, and that was a big mistake.
Uh-oh. I feel like this isn't going to end well.
So there's this famous story. Brummel's hanging out at the prince's place, and as the prince is about to leave, Brummel just casually throws out this question. Who's your fat friend? He was talking about the prince's companion.
Oh, no. You can't say that to a prince, even as a joke.
He thought it was funny, but the prince, not so much. He was super offended.
Oof, I bet.
That was basically the beginning of the end for Brummel.
Classic cases, yada butt, karnic on a t-shirt.
Ah.
Sometimes it's better to just, keep your mouth shut.
Word. Even if you think you're being funny.
Right.
You got to remember, there's always a line, even with people you're close to, especially if they have power.
So even the most charming, the most influential courtiers can mess up.
It happens.
It's a constant game. Got to stay sharp, got to observe, got to be strategic.
That's the name of the game.
Wow, I'm already seeing how these old school strategies are actually so relevant today.
Right.
It's all about understanding how to navigate these tricky social situations.
And influence people effectively.
Exactly.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Like how these dynamics play out in different settings.
Right. Now I'm seeing every office meeting is this mini court. all these power struggles, people playing their little games.
Oh, absolutely. It's happening everywhere. You start to notice who's trying to get the boss on their side, who's subtly trying to take down their rivals. It's like a whole new layer of understanding.
It's kind of like I've got this new superpower, you know? I can see through the facade.
That's the power of knowledge, right? Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
So true. Okay, let's get back to history for a sec. Any other stories of courtiers, like really messing up, or maybe some who were total pros at this whole game?
Oh, definitely. History's full of them. How about Jean-Baptiste Isabey? He was a French painter, super talented, and he had to navigate the court of Napoleon Bonaparte. Talk about high stakes.
Ooh, Napoleon. That's a big name. What was Isabey's role in all of this?
Well, he was a popular artist, painted portraits of all the bigwigs. He even painted Napoleon himself.
Wow, that's impressive. Okay, so he's already playing at a high level. What happened next?
Okay, so there's this big event, the Congress of Vienna in 1814. All these European leaders get together to basically redraw the map of Europe after Napoleon's defeat.
Okay, so high tensions, everyone's trying to figure out the New World Order, and Isabey's right there in the thick of it.
Yep. And he gets this commission to paint a huge portrait.
A portrait.
Yeah, like a grand group portrait. And it has to include two of the most powerful guys there, Talleyrand, this French diplomat, and the Duke of Wellington, a British military leader.
Okay, that's a tough one. These two were on opposite sides of, like, a major war.
Exactly. How do you
Yeah.
capture that in one painting without, starting World War III?
Right.
Well, Isabey was a clever guy. He came up with this brilliant solution. In the painting, he puts Talleyrand and Wellington on opposite sides of this big hall, and he paints Wellington getting all this attention.
Smart move. Got to stroke that ego.
Right. And by keeping them separate, he avoids any direct comparison or conflict. It was a total diplomatic win.
He basically used his art to, like, defuse a political bomb.
Yep.
It's kind of like sometimes the best way to deal with a tough situation is to find a creative solution that makes everyone happy.
Totally. Isabey shows us that understanding those power dynamics, those social cues, it can be just as important as, pure talent.
Okay, so we talked about courtiers messing up, courtiers succeeding. But what about the person at the top? The ruler, the boss, the one with all the power?
Yes. The kingpin. They're a huge part of this whole dance. And understanding their psychology, their fears, it's key to playing the game right.
So if you want to, like, really win, you got to get inside the king's head, see what makes him tick.
Exactly. Rulers, just like everyone else, they have egos, they crave validation, and they're terrified of losing their power.
It's easy to forget that when you see them surrounded by all that, pomp and circumstance.
Right. But beneath the surface, they're often insecure, paranoid, always worried about someone coming for their throne.
Man, that's a lot of pressure.
It is. So, how do you gain the trust of someone like that? Someone who's always looking over their shoulder. It's all about subtle reassurance, a touch of flattery making them feel secure and admired.
But not too much, right? You don't want to come across as, like, too ambitious or threatening.
Exactly. It's a tightrope walk. One wrong move, and you're out of favor.
Okay, so it's not just about, like, knowing the general rules, but also knowing the specific person you're dealing with.
You got it. Some rulers are easy to flatter, others not so much. You gotta tailor your approach.
No one-size-fits-all Chamaki tactic.
Nope. This game, it's constantly changing.
This is so interesting. It's like we're learning this secret language, this code for understanding power.
It kind of is, right? And once you know the code, you start to see it everywhere.
Okay, back to history. Any stories about rulers who were really good at managing their courtiers? Or maybe some who were totally clueless?
Oh, I've got a good one. King Louis XIV of France, the Sun King himself. He was a master at this whole manipulation thing.
Louis XIV, the Sun King, that's a name that screams power. What made him so good at running his court?
Well, he knew how to put on a show. He built the Palace of Versailles, right? A symbol of his power, a stage for all his courtly rituals.
The Palace of Versailles. Talk about a power move.
Right. And he used it brilliantly to control his courtiers. He created this whole environment where everyone was constantly fighting for his attention.
So he turned his court into this giant game of, like, who can impress the king the most?
You got it. And he was the puppet master. He knew how to pit them against each other, keep them guessing, keep them off balance.
That's some next level strategy right there. What's the lesson here? What can we learn from Louis XIV and his manipulative ways?
He understood the psychology of power. Rulers, They thrive on attention, on feeling validated. And if you create an environment where they get those things well, you're in a good position.
Keep the king happy, basically.
Exactly.
Wow. This is really making me think about all the subtle ways power plays out.
It's a fascinating subject, right? It's always evolving, always changing.
Okay, so we've got avoiding attention, fitting in, bringing good news, mastering those emotions, understanding the ruler, not being a chamsha. Is there anything else we need to know about this perfect courtier thing?
There's one more, and it's all about self-awareness.
Self-awareness. Okay, tell me more.
In a court, everyone's watching you, judging you. But it's just as important to watch yourself, your actions, your words, your reactions.
It's like being your own Cabri, spying on yourself to see how you're coming across.
Exactly. You need to know how you're being perceived.
Okay, so this whole courtier thing is a lot of mental work.
It is. You got to be in tune with your own feelings, but also be able to read other people's emotions and adjust accordingly.
So it's like this constant analysis,
Mm-hmm.
Am I making the right moves? Am I saying the right things?
You got it. It's a mental and social game.
Wow, this deep dive is really opening my eyes to like this whole hidden world of power dynamics. It's kind of blowing my mind.
Right. The more you learn, the more you realize how much is going on beneath the surface.
And the more control you have over your own destiny. Right?
Exactly.
This is so inspiring. I feel like I can like conquer the world now with all these new skills.
That's the spirit. Remember, knowledge is power. And knowing how to use that power subtly, strategically, that's the key to winning this game.
This deep dive has been amazing. Seriously, I'm seeing those power dynamics everywhere I go now.
Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Okay, so before we move on, I have one more question. What are some common mistakes people make when it comes to navigating power dynamics? Like, what should we avoid doing?
That's a good one, and definitely something to watch out for.
I'm all ears.
One of the biggest mistakes is trying to grab power too directly. Remember, in a court, in a workplace, anywhere, really, subtlety is key.
So, like, don't just barge into the CEO's office and demand a promotion.
Probably not the best move. A good courtier works behind the scenes. They build relationships, plan ideas.
They play the long game.
Exactly. Trying to force your way into a position of power, it just creates enemies.
Right, right. Makes sense. Okay, so what else should we avoid?
Don't lay it on too thick with the flattery. People can smell insincerity a mile away.
So, like, no showering the boss with empty compliments.
Nope. Find genuine things to appreciate. Even in a court, authenticity matters.
Right, you want your praise to feel real, not like you're just trying to, chonjigiri your way to the top.
Exactly. You got to know what the ruler, the boss, whoever it is, what they actually value.
This is a lot to think about. It's like a constant mental workout.
It can be, but it's worth it. When you learn to play this game well, the rewards can be huge.
Okay, so no power grabs, no fake flattery. What else should we watch out for?
Don't forget that things change. The power dynamics in a court, in an office, they're constantly shifting. And a good courtier has to adapt.
So it's not enough to just learn the rules. You have to be flexible, too.
Oh, yeah. Think of it like a chameleon.
Ooh, I like that.
Blending in, changing colors, adapting to the environment.
So, like, you got to be able to read the room and adjust your approach depending on who you're talking to, what the situation is.
Exactly. It's all about being adaptable and responsive.
This is so cool. I feel like I'm seeing the world with new eyes now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everyone's making their moves, trying to get ahead. It's like a giant game of chess.
It is. And knowing the rules gives you a huge advantage.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. We talked about the perfect courtier, power dynamics, all those common mistakes. But before we wrap up, I got to ask, what's one piece of advice you would give our listeners for navigating this whole world of power and influence?
Good question. I'd say, don't be afraid to observe and learn from the people around you. Watch how they interact, how they use their words, how they position themselves.
It's like we're all students in this crazy game of life, and everyone has something to teach us.
Exactly. Some are good examples, some are cautionary tales. Keep your eyes open, be curious, and don't be afraid to try things out and see what works for you.
Love that. This has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom with us.
My pleasure.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you learned something new today. And remember, knowledge is power.
But knowing how to use it,
that's the real art. It's like we've leveled up our social skills or something.
I could say that.
Okay, let's do a quick recap for everyone. So we talked about all these strategies from the 48 Laws of Power, like avoiding attention when you don't need it, blending in, bringing good news to the table, And that whole thing about mastering your emotions. Oh, and we can't forget about understanding the psychology of the ruler, and of course observing yourself. Did I miss anything?
I think you got it all. It really boils down to being strategic, adaptable.
And observant.
Exactly.
Man, this whole deep dive has been a real eye-opener. It's like, I don't know, we've been given this new way of looking at the world, at how people interact, at how power works.
That's the beauty of these principles, right?
Yeah.
They're timeless. You can use them in any situation where, where there's these power dynamics going on.
I feel like I don't know, more confident now, more self-aware. Like I can walk into, any situation and at least understand what's really happening, even if I don't want to play the game myself.
That's a great point. You don't always have to play, but knowing the rules, it gives you that awareness, that control.
Exactly. Like even if you're on the sidelines, you can still, watch the game, understand the moves, and make your own choices about how you want to engage.
Exactly. Knowledge is power, right?
Yeah.
And understanding these dynamics can be so empowering.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one final piece of advice you'd give our listeners for navigating this whole world of power and influence?
I'd say don't be afraid to observe, to learn from the people around you. Just watch how they interact, how they use their words, how they position themselves.
Like we're all learning from each other all the time, right?
Exactly. Some people are good examples, some are, lessons in what not to do.
So true.
But keep your eyes open, be curious, and don't be afraid to, experiment a little, see what works for you.
That's such great advice. This has been such an awesome conversation. Thank you so much for sharing all this wisdom with us.
Of course. Happy to be here.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you learned some new tricks and new way of looking at things. And remember, knowledge is power. And understanding these rules of the game, it can help you achieve your goals, create the life you want. So until next time, keep playing smart, keep learning, and keep leveling up.